Okay, James Soames, he says, Beats, you are my boxing sensei. You speak with wisdom, but listening to your previous videos about loyalty, that must be set aside when it comes to this guy Tunde. He is horrible on a PR and training level. He sees Yarde as a money bag. It's simple to see. And Yarde needs a decent trainer and not a guy who hasn't got much experience as him. I can't say how much Yarde needs to drop this sense of loyalty. It's not him that's getting his brains bashed in while his trainer's still learning on the job. Fuck that. Yarde isn't getting any younger. If he don't, it's the biggest mistake he'll ever make. Enough love, Beats. Big up, James. Big up, James. Now, I think it's coming across one-sided when I talk about loyalty. I have nothing against Yarde changing trainer at all. Nothing against it at all. It's got to be an informed decision, though, not influenced by any and anybody. And what we think may need a change in personnel, it could be just something they could work out, a few things they could work out between themselves. That's what I'm saying, you know. I think Tunde is going to have to humble his approach until he gets the results, and ultimately it's up to him, Yarde and Frank Warren to decide what direction they're going to go. But I will still say that no matter where Yarde goes, he is going to have to be loyal to some trainer, or vice versa, or a combination of both of them committing to each other if he's to be successful. So there's no escaping that. There's no escaping that at all. You know, I mean, everyone's just assuming that when Lennox Lewis and Vladimir Klitschko went over to Manny Stewart, that it was just, we all live happily ever after. I'm sure there's days when Manny wanted to throw both of them out of the gym, or both of them may have wanted to leave. But as you mature, you realize you can't just keep coach hopping, gym hopping, and you work through things. If you think your goals and objectives are going to be met, you work through things with people. That's a must in life. That has to be a must. And here's the thing. When you go to Manny Stewart, you're going to the top guy. You're going to the guy who's at the top of his craft. Now, you've already identified you needed to change. Now you're with Manny Stewart. Are you going to leave him as well? No. You're probably going to try and make it work. Because right now you're thinking, if I can't make it with Manny, then it's more than likely something to do with me. Why my career ain't progressing in the way I think it should be. There comes a time in life where we have to stop bullshitting ourselves, you know. Most fighters who leave a top trainer, if we go under the bonnet, we will see that the fighter is defected. He's looking for an excuse to tell us why it's not happening for him. And now we could even question, was his old trainer the problem? Or was it him? Like when Amir Khan left Oliver Harrison. That was his family members getting involved in Khan and Harrison's relationship. Khan got knocked out when he went to Rubio or whatever. What was the guy's name? The Cuban coach he went to. He got knocked out by Brady's Prescott shortly after. Then he went to Freddie Roach and he was doing the Gatti and Ward impressions in the gym. Got knocked out by Mikey Garcia. Now he's with Virgil Hunter. And yeah, he's had a couple of wins there. But it's Amir Khan. Anything was wrong with, and he's had a good career, but anything that's wrong with his career, it hasn't been the coaches. It's been him. Doesn't live the life outside the ring. Doesn't know how to fight inside. Likes to get in wars and doesn't have the chin for that. James Toney, Bill Miller, Emmanuel Stewart, Freddie Roach. Can't get much better than that. Had a great career though. He wasn't leaving trainers because they couldn't teach him any more stuff. He was just a rolling stone. He done things his own way, ultimately. And I know this question might come up a few times in a mailbag, but I challenge any of you to show me a successful boxer who hasn't had a stable team base and environment where they've been able to rely on team members, and in the process the team enables them to reach heights and levels that they may not even believe they could. Heavy D, he says, what do I do? Lions in the camp, what round is it? Lions in the camp, did I get knocked out? Lions in the camp, we don't get weak, we get deep. I think he's referring to some of the rounds, the intervals, where apparently some people are asserting that technical advice was needed, and Tunde was saying, lions in the camp, we don't get weak, we get deep. That's what I heard. I haven't seen all of these clips from BT. I just saw the one where he told him to empty out the tank. That's all I've seen. And if what Heavy D is saying is correct, that is cheerleading. It's not good corner work. You can't really say that's good corner work, can you? PD says, worst corner advice I've ever heard. He's going to get Anthony hurt. Shaking my head. Christopher White, empty the tank. Sounds like throwing all your eggs into one basket. Too early to me. Anonymous, although I think Tunde will benefit Yarde as a motivational speaker, I think Yarde really does need a more experienced coach in the corner for tactical advice between rounds. Even after the fight, Tunde did interviews that made me cringe because I think the guy is deluded and won't accept any real warranted criticism. Tunde thinks the fight was close and that they did nothing wrong. So how do you make the obvious necessary changes if the trainer already thinks everything he does is perfect? And let's not give Tunde all the criticism. Frank is just as accountable for what happened. Frank refused to put Yarde in with any British level, European level, Commonwealth level opposition and fed Anthony Albanian cab drivers, then went for a 12-round world level world championship fight. I think Yarde makes the adjustments and goes for the British title and steps levels up until his next world title opportunity. Just my thoughts. What would Eddie have did differently? Is what I'm going to reply to Anonymous. I'm not sure if he would have pitched Yarde and Boazzi in as early as people may want to see that fight, but I believe if they amassed the European, British, Commonwealth, Boazzi already has the British, if they conquered that level, I think the fight would happen 2020, and then the winner would be looking to fight for world honours maybe late next year or 2021. That's what I think would happen. I think if Yarde was at Matchroom, we would see the Hosea Burton fight. We would see a Craig Richards fight. We would see maybe a Bob Asajafe, but we'd see a step up in levels. Heavy D. He says, mentally, you tell someone to empty the tank. He performs as requested, but didn't get the KO. The tank is then psychologically empty, regardless. Yeah, that's the metaphor right there. The psychological tank got emptied out. You know, your word selection is very important. The fighter's psyche is fragile. It can be fragile unless he's a seasoned vet. Bossman, training Yarde the way they did, no hard sparring, matching him the way they did, 160-pound bum straight to crusher, and cornering him the way they did, especially not pulling him out at the end of the 10th after telling him to empty the tank, then watching him get hammered. It's how you get a fighter killed. Head should roll in the Yarde camp from a managerial, promotional, and coaching perspective to me. At best, Frank and Tunde didn't give him the best chance of winning. At worst, the cynic is justified in claiming that they sold him out. Well, before a punch was thrown, if anybody remembers, I said if this goes wrong, people are going to have to look at Frank as much as they will look at Tunde. But here's the thing, Frank is the gaffer. And if heads are going to roll, Tunde will be the scapegoat before Frank will. That's the thing. Untouchable, he says, Tunde will stalk Yarde if he tries leaving, looking for his windows, watching him while he's sleeping, following him around. I don't know if it will be physically possible to get rid of that. He's got some voodoo thing going on. The inventor, he says, narcissism should only be a trait displayed by the boxers, not the trainers. Limelight chasing and shouting hysterically to empty the tank halfway through a fight is more appropriate for someone destined to train Logan Paul than a potential future world champion. Reese, he says, I got a few views on this. I have worked with Tunde, had no issues with him, but I found an experienced boxer who connects well with him, can listen and follow his instructions. Tunde made a few errors in the fight, and a lack of jab also played a part in Yarde losing. So Kovalev made bread and butter boxing look like a masterpiece. My dad thinks as Tunde never used to jab as a fighter, he could articulate what to tell Yarde as he was deficient in many areas as Yarde. Okay. Tunde didn't used to jab as a fighter. That's interesting. I haven't seen no footage of Tunde actually boxing. I know he was 5-0. One stoppage he had. What was interesting, what you said there, is that a more experienced boxer can follow Tunde's philosophy and make that plural on boxing more than an inexperienced boxer like Yarde. That's very interesting. You see, a more experienced boxer who's perhaps done a few 10 or 12 rounders would know his body more. So when he's told to empty the tank, he's going to be thinking, well, I've been in 8th rounds in fights before. Maybe I could apply more pressure steadily, a little more pressure, but empty the tank, I'm not sure. But inexperienced guy who's never been in at this level and is looking for positive guidance from the corner has got a split decision to say, well, yes, I'm going to listen to my coach and I'm going to go for it. I'm going to empty the tank. And that's what Yarde did. And that's where his energy reserves were depleted from then on to the 11th. You're right, I'm wrong says, if people think AJ needs to change his trainer, then Yarde definitely needs to change his. Radiology, he says, even worse, after the tank's empty, left Yarde to survive for 4 rounds. John Marks, we have 2 possible explanations for Tunde and his behavior. 1, Tunde is a conman. 2, Tunde is completely inept and not fit for purpose. Sorry to be harsh, but I like Yarde. He's a tough kid. I'd like to see him go far. Nathan Briggs, he says, some of the worst advice I've heard in a corner in a world title fight. Well, today the boxing people are speaking and there's more to come. You're going to have to eat this and hopefully it will serve to improve you and not break you. That certainly isn't my intention here. Andres Gomez, seems to me like Tunde has just a mediocre understanding of tactics. He doesn't think in practical ways and doesn't like to take into account the circumstances, which when it comes to advice, it's the worst. He was trying to pump Yarde up with motivational talk, but couldn't give him any pointers on how to offset Kovalev's jab or do anything to get him where they wanted him. And Yarde already looked clueless in there. One moment on the front foot, another on the back. Add to that unspecific advice and it's over. Tunde can definitely help Yarde's abilities be sharp, but they need a proper trainer in there and just have Tunde oversee his training and let go of tactics and game plan. Yeah, maybe they could add on to the team and relieve Tunde of so much responsibility. Perhaps that's an option, but we'll see how the egos play out. Jess Hook 2. Tunde had Yarde's best interest at heart. I think and hope they will both learn from this. I hope so too. Marloni is 76. He says, Yarde has the tools, he just didn't have the proper plan. Rockstar 1996. As much as it shows Yarde's inexperience at the higher levels, it shows Tunde's as well. He was like a greenhorn in there compared to McGirt, who kept his fighters safe, informed, and also motivated. Yeah, well, I've been watching Buddy McGirt since the 80s, man, as a boxer since the 80s. And as for the training, from that Contender series, I think the first Contender series, to his work with Arturo Gatti, Paulie Malignaggi, it's been a minute. It's been a minute. Gerard D, he says, great vid again, Beats. I listened to the corner work from Tunde on BT Sports this morning, and there's nothing there regarding advice or instructions for Yarde. It's terrible. To tell him to empty the tank instead of keep attacking the body is beyond belief. I'll be honest, man, like, when I got hold of the BT clips and I heard that, I was like, whoa! Whoa! Because like I said, I had the volume off when I watched it live on Saturday. Azzy, Tunde and Yarde are very connected. I don't think they will or should split just yet. Give them some time to correct what they did wrong. I agree. Let the dust settle a little. OG responds to Azzy and says that would be good if Tunde realizes the mistakes that were made. Question is, does he realize? Azzy, he says, for the sake of both of them, I hope he does. Yarde boxing talk. He says, good one, bro, but why you draw a line on biting? Well, the 2 weapons of choice in boxing are your fists, are your hands. So low blows and rabbit punches, illegal, and if the referee spots them, he should admonish the perpetrator. Yes, of course. But headbutts and biting, no. You're not even using your legal weapons to commit them fouls, but I'm rationalizing that point of view. You know, a foul is a foul, I guess. Basics Beats, says Organic Fitness. It's sad that Yarde did better with a standard guard than the Philly shell. I'm just going to fill that gap for you. I guess that's what was meant to be said. Something unfamiliar did better. Most of the time, I am not for changing trainers, and Brits definitely overcritical based in sound bites, but Tunde must improve because Yarde is his student. Understanding the jab is foundational stuff and basic movements. What Yarde used was his natural fight in him, but a mind is supposed to direct him in the moment. He cannot use the shell, in my opinion. Neither has any footwork. It's quite evident Tunde gave no details on what to do. Unlike McGirt, who's been with Sergei for 2 fights, Yarde did not know what to do. Jab first, fight in clinch, constant head movements, body shots, slip and move, slip and jab, basics. Kovalev's plan was simple. Yarde also doesn't have the power that he could have on his shots because he doesn't sit on his punches. Tunde brought all this on himself. There is a legitimate criticism of Tunde. That's facts, and he must improve. They went for money. Dillian Whyte forecasted to a T what would happen in an IFL interview where Tunde, Yarde and Whyte were present. Tunde called Whyte negative. I remember it. I referenced it in the video. Yes. I mean, he was speaking to a pay-per-view fighter. Tunde was speaking to a pay-per-view fighter who's beat former world champions like Joseph Parker and fought AJ, has beat ranked contenders like Oscar Rivas. Of course, that was after he was talking to Tunde, but nevertheless, you're not talking to some mug off the road, Tunde. You're talking to a world heavyweight contender. You just don't do that. Johnny B says, yeah, tough one to judge, really. Was quite shocked to hear Tunde tell his fighter to empty the tank, especially so early on. But maybe Tunde saw something that we didn't, as Tunde should know more about his fighter than we do. Maybe it was the right call or the right way to motivate Yarde, even though Yarde ultimately lost. I didn't see Yarde do much of a fight. A decent 7th round, but nothing amazing. The 8th really set the fight on fire, and Yarde did come close to getting the KO. Kovalev was dead on his feet. Maybe going balls out in the 8th was wrong, but I think Yarde had to do that at some point if he was to stand any chance of winning. Much better he went for it instead of just cruising to a boring points loss like some other fighters would. Maybe Ajayi wanted Yarde to go all out in the 8th because he saw this as the point in the fight where Kovalev was tired, weak and susceptible enough to Yarde's punches, while Yarde himself was still fresh enough to hit with full power in a sustained attack. If you leave the assault to the last round, are you sure you will have the energy to do it? At the end of the day, Yarde got serious credit for rocking Kovalev, maybe a little too much credit from some, as he didn't do much else all fight, although he got stopped. He didn't appear to get too badly hurt and moves on to the next one with more experience, a better resume and a lot more dough. If you want to criticize Yarde or Ajayi on anything, probably the criticism is why they didn't go to Kovalev's body more and sooner. But maybe there are some technical reasons for that, being open to counters from Kovalev's jab and movement and stopping them, etc. Cheers, JB. Well, you're asking if they'll have enough energy in the last round. You can't rush knockouts. Just because Tunde wants a knockout in the 8th, it doesn't mean you're entitled to do so. Knockouts come when you put the work in, when you set up the foundations, when you use your jab correctly, when you've hammered the body. You have to set knockouts up. Wilder sets up his knockouts. He doesn't start going there and blah, 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 blah. He sets knockouts up. You have to set them up. Just because you want it in the 8th, you're not entitled to do so. You have to work towards your knockout. Work towards it. Yeah? Yarde needed to apply steady pressure. Steady pressure without gassing out, fatiguing too much. That's what he needed to do. He had 9 years in youth on his opponent. 9 years. Yeah? Like you said, they nearly got it, but nearly is not a win. Yeah? I'm judging it by what they said. They said they were going to win, not if, when we win, was the theme all throughout from Tunde. They weren't interested in anything else, and they didn't do it. Muhammad Ali used to predict rounds, but it's not in the manual. It's not in the manual. Yeah? You score the knockout when the knockout is ready to be scored. Not because I'm Tunde Ajayi, the man of platitudes. You set the knockout up, cutting the ring off, working the body, jabbing, cornering your man, setting him up for that opportune moment, feinting, picking your spots, working the body. I'm repeating myself now, but that's the truth. When you're building a house, you might want to finish it today or tomorrow, but the foundations and all the right steps have to be put in place, or it's going to be uninhabitable. It will collapse on you. Yeah? When it's ready, it's ready. When you bake a cake, it's ready when it's ready. When it's time for the knockout will be scored. They said they were there for the knockout. Yarde and Tunde said that. Well, every knockout artist knows that you have to set the knockout up. Yeah? You don't just run out there like a kamikaze pilot. Nah, that's not the art form there. They had 5 rounds to get Kovalev out of there. 5 rounds. To weaken him, pound on his old body, and then take him out when he's no longer able to defend himself. I've always heard from boxers, this ain't me making it up. I listen to what boxers and the coaches say. They say knockouts come when you're not looking for them. When Mark Wills took out Greg Page, it was quite a big upset. Yeah? He said, knockouts come when you're doing your job, when you're doing your work properly. That's when knockouts come. Dan B says, what was Tunde's advice at the end of round 8 when Yarde's tank was empty? Laughing out loud. I'm not sure on that. Shola Ibofin, he said, I've always thought of Tunde as more of a Bundini Brown type of figurehead in the camp. Nothing more, nothing less. Yarde's at a turning point in his career. He must decide his future. Yarde has got to make decisions. He's got to maybe have some words with Tunde as well. You know? These are things they can talk out. And if they can't resolve it, they can part their separate ways. But they can talk a lot of this stuff out. Zhang Banda. In the immediate post-fight interview, Yarde did say that he was inexperienced at the level and that my team is also inexperienced at this level. I hope they look at what they did wrong as well as what they did right. Yarde will be world champion if they can learn from this. Yeah, if they learn, the sky's the limit, man. If they can learn, the sky's the limit. Combing his headpiece, that's a big gamble, and it failed. Yep, that's right. And boxing is a gamble, but you want to minimize your risk on how much you gamble every move you make in that ring. And empty the tank is like putting all your chips on red on the roulette table. If that's a good metaphor, I don't know nothing about roulette or casinos. So. Case K. Tunde. Lack of experience showed. He should have told Yarde from the beginning to get inside, go to the body, and rough Kovalev up. I can't say Tunde is a bad trainer yet. He's still young, inexperienced. Tunde was a fighter himself. It goes to show just because a person fought doesn't mean it will translate into their training. Good point. Very good point, Case. Very good point. It doesn't mean that. Lloyd Crooks, he says, terrible advice. Shows his inexperience. Tunde thought it was an 8-round fight. Also, the danger in facing low-quality opposition, it supports bad habits and a lack of healthy fear of the opposition and an overestimation of one's punching power. It's also interesting to note that Tunde has never trained anyone to British level, let alone world level. I believe that the psychological damage will be worse than the physical. I'm glad you brought that up. Tunde thought it was an 8-round fight, said Lloyd. And that's the thing. If you haven't been coaching fighters in pressure situations, approaching the championship rounds, there has to be a chance that you might panic. There has to be a chance. If he had trained fighters, let's say Yarde had Southern Area title fights, well, he's fought for the Southern Area already, but British title and European and Commonwealth titles where he has been in the 8th and 9th and 10ths and had to start figuring a few things on the fly and working things out, doing some problem solving in the ring. If Tunde had been there before, we probably wouldn't have heard him say empty the tank. Yeah? It's a 12-round fight. You have to be a coach who can strategize for the whole 12-round fight. This ain't no 8-rounder. This ain't no 10-rounder against some lower-tier European-level fighter. This is Sergei Kovalev. An experienced coach would have known I've got 5 rounds and we've already probed a couple of weaknesses and vulnerabilities in this guy. I'm confident in 5 rounds we're going to get him out of there. I don't have to rush right now. Like I said in the video, maybe 10th, 11th, or 12th, then, yeah, empty the tank out. Makes sense. 71, he says, obviously hindsight is 20/20 vision, but that was an unnecessary risk to take in round 8. Shows lack of experience and ring IQ from Tunde. Also, ultimately, Yarde is the final say on any tactical decisions he makes in the ring. His lack of experience didn't allow him to override Tunde's questionable advice. Yeah, good point. Great point. Great point. Apex Bossman, he said, Tunde is daft. Four corners, he says, I'm in full agreement, Beats. Tunde's advice in the corner seemed poor. The game plan also seemed flawed, with not enough body shots in the earlier rounds. Also, Yarde didn't have the experience of fighting 12 hard rounds, even in sparring. Too much hype talking from Tunde and not enough tactics to prepare Yarde. Women's health and fitness, he says, excellent analysis, Beats. Much appreciated. Tyrese Bowie, he said it almost worked. Yeah, well, that's it, Tyrese. Almost. A day in the life of Ronnie and Reggie. I think that there's many ways to negate the bad effects of sparring. If Tunde is truly worried about Anthony's health, he could just stick to body sparring. I've heard Dominic Ingalls say in an interview that they mainly stick to body sparring in his gym, but I think Tunde and Anthony both being inexperienced is a bad match. Well, I keep hearing about the virtues of the body sparring in the Ingle gym, but Johnny Nelson, in a lot of his key fights, didn't show the same heart or desire as I've seen other fighters show. And Prince Nassim, when Barrera stood up to him, he kind of mentally crumbled a little. There could be something in the body sparring. There could be something good about that, but I'm not sure. Shoulder it both in. I still don't understand Ajayi's tactics. Ward had already set the blueprint. Body, body, body. Why reinvent the wheel, Tunde? Arrogantly disregarded Ward. Why? That's one of the key comments on this thread so far, what Shola said there. That's one of the key comments. Why arrogantly disregard Ward? Why? Somebody who's beat the man you couldn't beat twice. Why? William Lauria. Tunde has to take major credit in where Yarde is at as a fighter now. Hindsight is 2020. Would have been shrewd to employ an experienced head in the corner last Saturday, like Tyson Fury did with Roach against Wilder, when we can all detach ourselves from emotions and remain objective. In the cold light of day, Team Yarde is not that far off from being a force to be reckoned with at world level. I personally think Yarde himself is no fool, and judging by the way he was talking to Tunde at the end of the fight, understands that he is in the power position. I like Tunde and Yarde. I hope they don't let ego dictate their own downfall and employ an experienced head at championship level in the camp and corner. Tunde's got a big ego there. Bringing somebody in to undermine Tunde ain't going to sit well with him. Defoe. Tunde should have his trainer's license revoked. Someone is going to die with advice like that. John Mark says, I hear rogue traders are looking for Tunde. Replying to Defoe. Rich 0029, he says, if you're going to tell your fighter to empty the tank, you need to be ready with the towel in the next round, as your fighter isn't going to be able to defend himself. Yeah, pretty much, yeah. Especially an inexperienced fighter like Yarde. Reese Boxer, he says, I am not against the Mayweather boxing pads or the boxing systems Tunde has, but Reese's issue is have your own variation. So if plan A fails, you have other alternatives in the ring. When guys turn pro too early, the lack of fundamentals always get exposed. Yeah, I am a proponent of finding your own style. I know I'm not a coach or anything like that. If you're going to do the Philly shell, like Reese said, have your own variation. You can't be Mayweather. You can't be James Toney. You can't be Georgie Benton. Furious Leo, he says, it's not Mayweather's style, it's the trainers that need to stop utilizing that style. It's not for everybody. Ring IQ Boxing Talk. That's what happens when the trainer has little more to offer than motivational speeches, catchphrases, and flashy mitt work. Big up Ring IQ. Yeah, from what I saw in the title, it looks like Mr. Bashir was tearing up that mitt work in this video, saying it's nothing but aerobics. He ain't impressed at all. Loke Dog, he says, empty the tank. Worst advice ever. Come on, Tunde, you're a trainer, not a casual fan. It wasn't the best, Loke Dog, let's say that. It weren't the best advice. No, it certainly weren't. Waynos, he says, this is what I don't get about this fight. Yarde did better than expected and gave a good account of himself. He can be proud, but he lost because of inexperience. Why was he inexperienced? He got hit throughout the fight with a jab. Why could he not adjust? He gassed out in the 8th. Why? He came close, but he ultimately lost for reasons. All I'm seeing is posts on Insta saying, Yarde landed more punches than anyone else. People are so simplistic, man. Jeff Boxing says, to be frank, to Yarde, neither B-Hop or Andre Ward could take away Kovalev's jab. I mean, they did better than Yarde, but the jab gave both fits and their Mensa level ring IQs. So I don't think that's fair to Yarde. His instruction going into the 8th was literally empty the gas tank, so he really just followed his instructions, which is good quality. Ward did better with Kovalev's jab in the rematch. He was leaning off the line after he threw his own jab. He countered the jab more effectively in the rematch, and he did a lot better with it in the rematch. I had Kovalev winning the first fight. Makes Sense 71 at Jeff Boxing. Not always a good quality to follow instructions unless you are a foot soldier with low ring IQ and rely completely on corner instructions to do all the thinking for you. Some scientific boxers only use the corner as a second opinion from a different perspective to maybe spot something that they, the boxer, has missed in the heat of battle. Agree that even Ward struggled with Kovalev's jab, though that's unfair to hold that against Yarde at this point. Jeff Boxing, he replies that makes sense and says, nah man, I disagree. Lobachenko, for instance, gets praised for his ring IQ, but brings a great corner with him into the ring, following instructions. The Linares KO, for instance, it was Anatoly that told him what to do, and Lomachenko executed. Crawford, B-Hop, they all followed instructions. The trainer cannot fight for you, but in the heat of battle, you want a guy who will commit to his instructions. That's what trainers are there for. Andrew, he's a good student and fast learner, did what he was told. Yarde did have all the tools to beat Kovalev, but didn't know how to use them. That decision then comes down to your hired help, who should have been plotting the path to victory instead of fluffing him up, telling him beautiful when he was clearly losing. Makes Sense 71 at Jeff Boxing. Mayweather didn't always follow advice. Best ring IQ in the business. At the end of the day, the fighters got to know when to override bad advice. I can't think of many situations in life where you would just follow without your own critical thought, unless you're a child or lack intelligence. What's the point having ring IQ if you're just going to follow every instruction anyway? A great ring IQ allows you to make decisions independently. Hence, some boxers rely on their corners more than others. Yeah, that's true. That is true. That is true. I mean, there's a duality there, isn't it? Like, you want to be thinking on your feet as a boxer, solving problems independently, and you still want to have the ability to hear what the corner are telling you in case you miss anything or there's something that you could be doing better. Jeff Boxing, he says, to be honest, I don't like people knocking Yarde too much. While he ain't the finished product and Tunde is criminally inexperienced to be in this role, I can acknowledge that they do work on craft and Yarde has a good foundation given how little experience he has. Yarde ain't just a puncher, he really dedicated himself to the craft and it shows. The problem is Tunde don't have the experience to address the subtle things that need to be addressed for an elite boxer. I think Tunde and Yarde should reach out to Buddy McGirt in the near future and have him help both on them things, because Tunde and Yarde got good chemistry and Yarde has tools and good technique as well as decent timing. They just need more insight from someone who's seen it and done it for decades like McGirt. Andrew, he agrees with that and says what's clearly lacking in the camp is experience. Let's hope they realise this, because it could make a world of difference to how his career pans out. Stella, she says, awful advice to a novice. No plan for the eventuality that Yarde wouldn't stop Kovalev in the 8th. There you go, Stella. You got to have a plan C, a D, E, and an F. You got to have contingencies in there. Top trainers do. And it don't always work, but top trainers do. JF, he says, imagine how good Yarde is going to be with a proper trainer like Buddy McGirt or Virgil Hunter. John Marks replies to that and says, Virgil Hunter? Question mark. Haha. He's done nothing in boxing. He had Ward fall on his doorstep. That's it. Every other guy he's had has been shocking. His corner advice is up there with Tunde. It's that bad. Well, Ward didn't fall on his doorstep. He's been with Ward since he was 9 years of age. It's one of the longest coach and trainer partnerships in boxing, actually. He practically built Ward as a boxer, so I agree. He hasn't had many other fighters who've had the success that Ward has, but most of the great trainers normally have one star pupil in their resume. 2 is pushing it. Headley War, he says maybe Tunde didn't cross Anthony Yarde's gas tank. Well, I'll end it like this. That'll be all more the reason for not putting your man in a world title shot if you're not sure about his gas tank. Peace.